In the realm of the Dark Guild, a place where life barely existed, the queen appeared. With tears on her face, she lamented, saying that, in the eyes of her creator, her feelings for her were nothing more than cold, simple rules. At that precise moment, a tear fell from her cheek, and, upon touching the barren ground, something extraordinary occurred. From that dead land sprouted a vast field of grass. The earth was covered with a vibrant, dazzling green, teeming with life. Elizabeth sat there, hugging herself as she murmured that she felt upset. She knew she had made that decision on her own, but even so, sadness overwhelmed her. She considered it ridiculous and wondered how she had become so fragile. However, she added that it didn't matter. She could live well with that decision. On the contrary, she thought that losing an opponent of his caliber had been his greatest mistake. At the same time, she reflected that she would never return, unless he himself came looking for her and asked her to come back. It was then that she perceived something strange. She said she felt Amelia's presence and knew clearly that she was there, in the demonic domain. However, she wondered why she had not completed the task assigned to her. Determined, the queen took flight at great speed toward where her mount was located. On the way, she encountered animals with dark gears embedded in their bodies. These, one by one, were extracted as the queen sliced through the sky with the incredible speed of her flight. Gathering all the dark gears, and with a single motion of her fist, the queen destroyed them completely. That dirty magic persisted everywhere, and that she would resolve it all quickly, though she was aware that as a spectator, she should not get involved. However, she shook her head in denial and murmured to herself that she was no longer playing with him, that she was free to do as she pleased. Determined, she hastened to focus on what really mattered. She directed her gaze toward the place where she felt Amelia's presence, and with firmness, asked why she was hiding there. Then, she supposed that perhaps Amelia had accepted that dirty magical power in her eagerness to achieve greater strength. If she really had, it would be a huge disappointment for her. With a strong and determined voice, she shouted Amelia's name, demanding that she come out of her hiding place. However, it was obvious that the little dragon did not respond as she was still inside the egg. Elizabeth reflected for a moment and supposed that perhaps Amelia had already reached the level of a demon king. As a golden dragon, her talent was unparalleled. Even against opponents of her level, she could retreat unscathed. Determined, with a single motion, she sent an energy hand underground, which quickly emerged on the other side. In her power, she held a capsule containing Amelia's egg. With another precise motion, she began to squeeze the capsule until the egg emerged from its confinement. Without wasting time, Elizabeth began to recite a spell in front of the egg and then touched it gently. The spell caused the egg to slowly disintegrate, gathering all the shell into Amelia's center, leaving a mark there as a result of the union of her essence. After that, Elizabeth commented that it seemed she had underestimated the Dark Guild. Upon closer inspection, she perceived that Amelia's life was at zero and her magical power had been completely drained, leaving only an empty body. Calmly, she approached her and softly whispered, restoring 1,000 years of life to her. Using her forced resurrection ability, she enveloped Amelia with part of her magical power. It was then that the little dragon opened her eyes. The queen, without wasting time, asked her to explain clearly what had happened. However, to Elizabeth's surprise, Amelia looked at her with curiosity and asked who she was, revealing that she did not. After asking that question, the little dragon continued with another, questioning whether she really knew who she was. Elizabeth, upon hearing those words, felt a pang inside her. Immediately, she understood what had happened. Weiss Malfoy had stolen Amelia's soul memories. That revelation provoked an implacable fury in the queen, who through gritted teeth promised herself she would find him and completely destroy him. Elizabeth's anger was such that her power began to manifest uncontrollably. A dark, overflowing energy enveloped not only the demonic territory, but also began to spread across the entire world. At that moment, the queen activated one of her abilities, the Demon Queen's Gaze, a power that projected her will and authority beyond any imaginable limit. That action did not go unnoticed. Many felt the impact of her power, as if the very air had changed its texture. Among them was Annie, who at that moment was in the midst of a battle. Feeling that overwhelming presence, she stopped and looked toward the horizon, visibly unsettled. Questioning whether Elizabeth was also in the demonic territory, she murmured to herself as she tried to understand what was happening and thought that perhaps that powerful queen was there because she had broken the seal of the nine-headed demon serpent. The president of the Sword Saints Guild also felt it and commented that a very powerful magical force was watching them, something Gigi confirmed. However, he asked them not to worry, assuring them he knew exactly who was behind that vigilance. Even Uncle Boss perceived that presence and, with a slightly curious expression, asked if the queen was checking that they were properly taking care of the divine tree. But one of the members of the Dark Sea could not hide his unease. Nervously, he declared that they had been discovered and that for now they had to return to their hiding place. He assured them that soon they would have to face her. However, the little monster at his side interrupted him, questioning how he could know when and where that would be. Meanwhile, Alpha, intrigued, asked what was happening, but Wang Kai, in a dry and authoritative tone, told him to mind his own business and reminded him that they would return home after collecting the protection money. For his part, Leping, with teary eyes, commented emotionally that they had been apart for so long that he couldn't help but cry. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure watched from the shadows, wondering if that was a challenge and if the time had come to defeat her. His words were loaded with intrigue, as if he were measuring every move of the queen. After that impressive demonstration of power, Elizabeth returned to a state of calm, her mind occupied with more personal thoughts. She reflected on something she had seen briefly about him. She saw him saying that he could not stop crying after parting from her. That image brought a slight smile to her face as she concluded that he was still an arrogant guy. But this time, she was determined not to let him escape. He wouldn't get rid of her so easily. However, after that brief revelation, she dismissed the thought, aware that it was not the time to be distracted by those emotions. There were more urgent matters to attend to. Elizabeth leaned toward Amelia and, with a delicacy that contrasted with her imposing power, took the little dragon's face in her hands. She brought her closer slowly and spoke in a warm, reassuring tone. She asked her not to worry, saying they would recover her memories, and promised to ensure everything returned to how it once was. Her determination was unshakable, and the energy she emanated seemed to envelop them both, providing a brief sense of security amid the chaos. Meanwhile, in a volcanic terrain, where the air was heavy with scorching heat, rose a desolate landscape of fire and lava. Amid that hellish scene stood the Demon King's training ground, where a familiar capsule was surrounded by the blazing fury of that hostile environment. The little television looked at its master with concern and asked why they had been transported to that place. The man, still trembling, responded with a shaky voice. He explained that he had created a blocking field in that place, specifically designed as the opposite of his queen's magic, to prevent her from finding them. The television, with a mix of curiosity and unease, asked again, "Why did you do that? Wasn't the Demon Queen Elizabeth the goal long to achieve all this time?" Weiss sighed deeply. Finally, he said, "It is precisely because of her that I hid. I need to regain my best condition before I can see her again. Now is not the time." The little television remained silent for a moment, processing its master's words. Then, with a spark of determination on its screen, it asked, "Is there anything I—" As it asked the question, it silently pleaded fervently for its master not to give up. It felt that words were not enough to convey all the support it wanted to offer. Weiss shook his head and replied, "It's not necessary. For now, the only thing that matters is to endure. This is no longer a matter of strategy, but of stamina. In the end, only the one who can hold on until the very last moment will be the true winner." The little television tried to argue again, but its master interrupted it, saying that he had waited a long time for this moment, and now all he had was time. Immediately after, he activated the eye that contained Emilia's memories, allowing him to observe fragments of the queen's life. The images projected intimate and memorable moments that seemed to have been etched in his magical memory. Weiss's face turned slightly red as he gazed at the scenes. With a faint smile, he murmured that now he could relive Emilia's memories to soothe his nostalgia for her fall. Truly happy to be able to do this. The little television did not question its master's words. It knew those memories held deep meaning for him, though it preferred not to delve further. However, as it observed Weiss's expression, it couldn't help but reflect. If they really could just stay there, simply waiting, it thought to itself, already knowing that if the Swordsman's Guild kept growing stronger, it would inevitably affect its master's plans. A feeling of urgency began to emerge within it. Although it respected Weiss's decision, it understood that they could not afford too much inaction, thinking that it had to do something soon, though it didn't dare voice its concern out loud. Meanwhile, the hero was in the kitchen, carefully and skillfully chopping an onion into tiny pieces. As he worked, he commented that he had finally finished chopping the onion. However, his eyes began to water due to the strong aroma of the vegetable. Moreover, he murmured that as long as the pudding wasn't ready, he could take the opportunity to prepare Elizabeth's favorite onion soup, and with a bit of garlic bread, he was sure to make her happy. Without wasting time, he began preparing the ingredients for the soup. He moved his hands skillfully, but a question that unsettled him kept arising in his mind. While stirring the pot, he said quietly whether his affection for her was so obvious and whether Elizabeth discovering it would mean they could no longer remain friends. After some time, Lepping, already at the table, watched the main door impatiently. Resting his chin on his hands, he thought that she still hadn't returned. The wait grew long and heavy until, finally, the sound of the door opening broke the silence. Lepping quickly stood up, a look of relief and joy on his face. He called out to Elizabeth. But his happiness was short-lived. Looking toward the entrance, he was greatly surprised. It wasn't Elizabeth who had arrived, but Wang Kai and Alpha. Seeing them, Lepping couldn't hide his disappointment. Recovering immediately, he asked with a certain urgency whether they had seen Elizabeth outside. We've finished this week's chapter. If you made it this far, comment, "Merry Christmas." Also, don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so YouTube keeps recommending us. Thank you to everyone who watched up to this point. See you in the next video. But before that, here's the next chapter and a comic you'll surely enjoy.